Are you the ancestor that brings balance back to your lineage? Or are you the ancestor that continued more of the same? Saludos, I'm Doctora Rocio. I'm a seer, a medicine woman, and a counseling psychology PhD, and my work is at the intersections of decolonizing, wellness, and spirituality. In today's video, I'm going to teach you to understand colonization as a collective trauma. Secondly, understanding colonization as intergenerational trauma and why decolonial healing work is needed for all peoples. And thirdly, also going to teach you about my theory, decolonial shadow work, and specifically related to white people. The truth is that we need all of us doing this work if we are to birth a new paradigm. Decolonial healing work is also important for white people. This work is about nuance. If we are to restore harmony and balance to our earth, we need to acknowledge the pain of all peoples. And so while it is true that white people have benefited from this paradigm, it is also true that they too have experienced the trauma of being colonized. They actually carry both the trauma and also the power that came from colonization. This is an important truth. And so it is important to acknowledge the intergenerational trauma that white people carry. An important distinction when we are talking about decolonial work with white people is that they have been harmed but not oppressed. The truth is that white people still carry unjust power in this paradigm. To say that white people have been oppressed or are oppressed in this paradigm is not true. They may experience harm, but they also carry power. These are the nuances that we need to attend to if we are to truly birth a new paradigm, if we are to truly come into collective healing and liberation. We cannot bypass these truths. When we speak about colonization, the first piece that I want us to understand is that we need to see colonization as collective trauma and as intergenerational trauma. This is something that has affected all of us, regardless of our backgrounds. The people that came before us experienced deep trauma from colonization, deep trauma from being fragmented from the earth, fragmented from spirituality, and fragmented from their ancestral traditional ways. It is important to understand that this has an impact on us psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually, and that this has also been passed down from generation to generation. It is also important to acknowledge the power dynamic that exists when we look at colonization. When we talk about healing from colonization and specifically decolonial healing, it is important to attend to the nuances of this work. We need to acknowledge that there is healing that must be done from all groups that have been racialized, including white people. In decolonial work, it is always important to center Black, Indigenous people of color because they are the ones that have been the most harmed and have been oppressed in this colonial paradigm. And also, it is important to acknowledge the nuance that white people were also harmed. Yes, they have benefited. Yes, they unjustly hold power and privilege in this paradigm, but they have also experienced harm. Now, when I say experience harm, that doesn't mean that they are oppressed within this system. We need to acknowledge the power dynamics, and we need to be honest about who carries power and privilege in this paradigm. But when we are speaking about collective healing, and from a healing perspective, we need to acknowledge the pain of all peoples, including the pain that white people have experienced from this event. As we are facing the trauma of colonization, and we also acknowledge the pain of white people, I want to call in and invoke the work of Bell Hooks. I believe, just like Bell Hooks, that this work must be rooted in compassion. I want to read her words to you. How do we hold people accountable for wrongdoing and yet at the same time remain in touch with their humanity enough to believe in their capacity to be transformed? This work is not about shaming and blaming and judging white people. It's about also seeing their humanity and believing that they too can change, that they too have been programmed without their consent, and that if we truly believe in the sacred and spirituality, that all of us are divine, sacred beings. And so seeing all of us in that way and calling all of us higher so that we can show up in that way. I want to take a moment here. If you are benefiting from today's video, I want to invite you to like and also click on notifications so that you can be notified for when my next weekly video becomes available. The second way that we can understand colonization is to view it as intergenerational trauma. Intergenerational trauma means trauma that was passed down from the previous generations. It is the wounds that we carry from our ancestors, from our grandparents, from our parents, wounding that they were not able to heal, lessons that they were not able to integrate, pain that they did not heal. And so each generation that isn't able to complete their work, their inner work, their healing work, passes that on, those wounds on, that trauma on to the next generation. If we think about this from the perspective of colonization, there are many wounds and there is much pain that is still needing to be healed from both Black, Indigenous people of color and white people. And when we specifically look at white people, there is much healing and unlearning and divesting that needs to be done. Again, I want to remind you that we need to center Black, Indigenous people of color and their healing, because they are the ones that are harmed and oppressed in this current paradigm. And also, it is important for us to understand that white people need healing too, and that if we are truly going to restore harmony and balance, we need healing for all of us. For white people in particular, because the previous generations have not confronted the ways that they both colluded and created colonization, there is much healing and unlearning and divesting that needs to be done by this current generation. I believe that you're here because your ancestors prayed for you. Your pre-colonial ancestors prayed for you to break the colonial cycle in your lineage. And so you are here to do this work, this inner decolonial shadow work, this inner decolonial healing work, so that you can also clear the karmic debt that your ancestors, your colonial ancestors left. By you doing your inner decolonial healing work, you can break this colonial cycle in your lineage. The third piece that I want to introduce to our understanding of colonization is decolonial shadow work. And this is a theory that I developed that's related to our collective shadow work. The parts of our humanity that we repress, the parts of our humanity that we do not want to confront, that we reject. And so at this time, there are many people, particularly white people, that are doing anti-racism work that do not agree with the colonial capitalist patriarchy, that express decolonial values. And at the same time, they are still showing up in colonial ways. How do we make sense of that? How can a white person have anti-racist decolonial values and yet their behavior still shows up in colonial ways? This speaks to the need of decolonial shadow work, because even while a white person may consciously reject the colonial capitalist patriarchy, may consciously believe in decolonization, because they have been programmed by this oppressive paradigm, because they have been indoctrinated by the colonial capitalist patriarchy, and because they also carry colonial intergenerational trauma from their ancestors, their grandparents, and their parents, they still may show up in colonial ways. There is deep healing work that needs to be done to release these energetic imprints, to break this colonial cycle in the lineage, and to also heal from this deep pain. Decolonial shadow work is not just about unlearning, it is also deeply spiritual, it is emotional, and it is also ancestral work. This is the work that white people are called into. If they are ready to do deeper work, if they are ready to come into right relationship and are seeking to embody decolonial values to restore harmony and balance to the earth. I believe this is the work that is needed if we are truly going to dismantle the colonial capitalist patriarchy and birth a new world. As a medicine woman, it is my prayer that from today's video, you understand the need for all of us to show up in this work. It is also my prayer that white people understand that they need to show up in a specific way to restore harmony and balance to the world. They need to do their unlearning and healing work so that they can come into right relationship, so that they can break the colonial cycle in their lineage. This is the deeper work that we need to be able to restore harmony and balance to our world. This, I believe, is how we bring forth the eagle and condor prophecy. If you are receiving medicine from my videos, I want to invite you to subscribe to my YouTube community.